Hey, welcome back everybody. Welcome to CMN103. Today, my name's Gail Crimmins. Today I have a very special guest with me today, Dr. Paul Williams, who's an author, published author, who is also a lecturer at USC and lectures into creative writing. So today we're going to be talking about creative writing. We're also going to be talking about the creative writing process, about creativity, and about some of those other ideas that are key concepts within the creative industry. So welcome, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay, so Paul, could you please tell us a little bit about what you offer at USC in terms of creative writing?
I'll be here all day, I think. Well, creative writing, what we do in our first year, is offer possibilities. Because creative writing is not just, it can be sitting at home reading an author in your garret, but creative writing has expanded so much that our creative writing students go out and they get jobs in advertising, they're writing blogs, they're working, one's writing the weather for Channel 7, writing about cyclones. There's so many possibilities with creative writing. It's basically about just being creative, and even in terms of what you think creative writing is. So we suggest a lot of possibilities, that you can do this, and then we can narrow down those to our traditional ideas of writing, like writing short stories, novels, writing screenplay, writing song lyrics, writing, what else do we do? Writing for games. That's where we go. And then in our third year, we basically send people out into the real world, and they go and work with local industries and local people and get jobs out of that. So maybe what we think of creative writing is this sitting at home writing your book is not necessarily what we do. It is what we do as well, and we have some wonderful success stories of people who've done that, and they're working and they're making millions of dollars, and they're writing with James Patterson, etc.
Oh, wow.
But we have also people working in places that are totally unexpected. That's all
really,
part of our creative
yeah, that's
writing.
really interesting, because we're going to actually be talking about something called embedded industries a little bit later in the semester. So what Paul's talking about there is taking your creative skills, in this case it's creative writing, but it's any of those creative talents and skills that you have within the creative industries, and applying them to non-traditional industries and environments. So you're penetrating the other areas of work with your creativity. So how would you define creativity? If you say a piece of writing is creative, what features does it have?
That's an interesting question, because basically it's being yourself. That's the thing. And finding we always talk about finding your voice, and that's basically being honest and writing from yourself. And often we get restrained. We think we have to do something, we have to write in this way, we have to think a certain way. And I think it's basically thinking out of the box and using that great resource, which is our own imagination, our own creativity, that we have naturally. As children we have it. We just have to go back to being children again, maybe. But just allowing that freedom to think and be ourselves. I know that's very general, but that's where it starts. Yeah.
No, I like that very much, because just as a short anecdote, I was born in Wales, in the UK, into a very working class family. We had a very specific kind of dialect, and I didn't think that was proper enough. And I didn't think that was correct enough. So that when I went to school, well, it was taught out of me probably, that there were formal ways in which I was to communicate, and there were formal ways in which I was to write. And so the vocabulary of my home and the rhythms of the communication of my home and my culture were written out of me, or were taught out of me through that process. And it wasn't actually until much, much later did I realise that there was a richness and a lyricism and an authenticity and a creativity and all of those things within that original kind of my first voice, if you like. And I had to relearn it almost, or remember it in some way. So you're saying hold on to and harness the unique liveness of who you are.
Yeah, and that's why we often try and separate that editor or that critic in your head who tries to say you have to do it this way, and it has to be done this way. And we often get drummed that ourselves gets drummed out at school. And so hopefully what we do is try and invite that back, invite the creative self back. And that's why it's such fun, because it doesn't feel like work, because we're actually tapping to something that we enjoy doing. Okay.
And I know that you've written a book, you've published a book called Playing with Words.
Mm.
So what techniques and what strategies do you use when you're playing with words to generate that creative, authentic voice?
Yeah, that's our course. Our first introduction to creative writing course is called Playing with Words, because that's what we need to do. And it feels like we're giving license to just play. And if you look at great writers, that's what they do. They're not following a formula most of the time. They're just playing, being themselves. And also we're allowing failure. And that's another thing that we talk about, is that we think we have to achieve this, have to do this. But when you're playing, you're not thinking of success or failure. You're just thinking of playing and enjoying and finding ways to play. So that's our metaphor that we use. It's not a metaphor, we really do it.
Yeah.
So we really do play, and we try all sorts of things. And people say, oh, look at this, and let's try this. And that's when we find out about ourselves and our creative center that way.
And so not being afraid, or not even thinking about failure, is that right? Not having that as part of the radar?
Yeah. Well, we can actually say, let's try and fail. Let's try and go somewhere where, you think, I can't do this because that's bad. Let's try it. Let's do it. But as you say, it's off the radar. We shouldn't be thinking in those terms, because you can often see a book that's been written that people have been trying too hard to do something, and we don't have to try to be creative. I think it's, if we can find that innate sense of creativity again, we just be. And that sounds, it's difficult actually for some people. It was difficult for me. And just an example, I wrote a novel and I sent it to a publisher. I thought, yes, it's got to be this way. And the publisher said, yes, if you could push this a bit more and change this character, make it like this. And I tried really hard. I said, okay, to get it published, I've got to do this and this. The novel got worse and worse and worse. And eventually the publisher said, it's lost something, so we're not going to publish your novel. So, okay. So then eventually I thought, I'll write it for myself, for nobody else. I'm just going to follow my own creativity and write it the way I want. And then it became this wonderful novel that everyone wanted to publish. So that was a lesson I learned. Marcus Suzette had the same thing when he wrote The Book Thief. He wrote it for himself. He says, if I was never going to publish this book, I'd still write it because I'm enjoying writing it. I'm doing it for myself. And when you do that, then you open up those creative ways to be.
Yeah, and you do. I think the really important thing is here, you don't read about it, you don't think about it, you actually practice it.
Yeah. Oh, that's another thing about creative writing. It's like the riding a bicycle. You don't learn the theory of, you just do it. And like I said, I want to write a book, what shall I do? So, well, just start writing. Just do it. And then you learn as you go. It's, oh, this is wrong, this is right, this is how I do it. So a lot of it's practice. We do that in the other creative industries too. In creative writing, definitely, we throw people and say, try it, do it, and see how it works, see how it feels.
So Paul, obviously you've had success, you've been published many times, and that's not necessarily what every student would want. They want different applications for their creativity, etc. But how would a student, whether it's in creative writing or drama or music, etc., how might they start to think about positioning themselves for the creative industries in terms of the world of work? What techniques or strategies would you have in terms of finding a place for yourself within that workplace?
Well, it's changed a lot. And I talked about that writer in the garret, writing by themselves, isolated. It's not the same anymore. Writers aren't like that anymore. You have to not sell yourself, but you have to be out there. And so even before you've produced a great amount of work, the thing to do is just to start being in social media, connecting yourself to people. Most of my successes come from connections to people, either through social media or meeting them, or going to places, going to writing events, and just connecting and meeting people. And it's through that human interaction that everything works. And so a writer these days is someone who has Twitter, is on Facebook, has blogs, and takes any opportunity to connect. And that's what we have to do. So in terms of being successful, it's more like just connecting to people any way you can. And that's why we do offer a lot of ways in the program to connect, and that's connecting. And through writing competitions, through going to events, and then connecting to industry. Like we have people in third year saying, we have companies coming saying, come and work for us. And we say, well, I want to be a writer, but okay, I'll try this. I'll go to this advertising thing and do some writing for you. And then they find, oh, this is how you do it. And someone's written a novel because of their work. So in other words, don't think one single mind, I'm going to go this path. There are many paths to that same way. And that's what a lot of our students have done. And it's very exciting to see that happen. It's the same with me. Like, I thought I didn't want to go to this one conference in England. It was an academic conference. I wanted to sit home and write my book. I went to this conference. Then there was a publisher sitting there saying, I'm looking for a mystery thriller thing. Who do you know who could write one? I thought, well, me. So I'm writing one right now. Yeah. So that sort of thing. So just being open-minded and taking every opportunity, even if they're not exactly where you think you're aiming for.
And I think a lot of writers, a lot of creative people more generally, are a bit suspicious about that self-profiling. That somehow it's not authentic, it's not who they are. But I think it depends on how you do it. And I think that what you're talking about there is that kind of connection to another human. This is not just about a glossy self-presentation. This is actually saying, this is who I am. This is what I love to do. This is what I can do. This is what I want to do. Let's meet, let's talk, let's find connections, let's find opportunities. But it's being in the space, isn't it, with other people, to be known and for them to know who you are and know what your work is and who you are.
No, exactly. Because I don't like that idea too. It's self-promotion, but it isn't self-promotion. It's also confidence. A lot of us with our creative work, we're very shy, or we're very humble is the word, which is good. But to have that confidence, say, look, here's who I am. This is what I do. Let's have a look. Show it to the world. And that it's hard because often that's your soft space, your creative space. But I suppose that's another tool we can have, is to show that to the world. How do we present that? We do a lot of that too, like workshopping and peer reviewing, showing other people in a safe space. Okay, because then eventually you have to send your work out to people who are not going to be that flattering about it. so it's also
and there are some times when you can reject that and think actually they don't get it. They're not my audience. Or there are times when you can think, wow, they've actually got a point. I'm going to take on board some of that.
That's the balancing act. You have to have that confidence and humility. Like, is this not good enough yet? All these people are saying this, so I think there's something wrong with it. Or they don't understand it, I'm going to push this and get it published. And of course, we all know those stories about writers who, even J.K. Rowling, got rejected, and then they get, Harry Potter comes out. In a way it's sort of a myth, because I think if she got so many rejections, she probably rewrote and re-honed and changed and adapted, and eventually find the level. So it's not like I have everything and you just don't understand me, or the other way around.
And so there are many iterations on it to your work. It's often not yet finished, and so rather than thinking it's complete rejection,
that's true.
It's at a stage. It perhaps needs a bit more of this or a little less of that. Or
that's true, because a lot of time we write something, think that's done, it's finished, and that's the beginning. It's like everything. It's like I suppose when you listen to a finished piece of music, it's been recorded and re-recorded and polished, and we think that we have to get to that stage in our first draft, and of course we can't. The same with writing. If you looked at the first draft of some great novels, you wouldn't recognize them. So it's a process, and I suppose that's that idea of riding the bicycle. Writing is a process. You just go and you do it, and you have to keep, and you can fall off. You have to fall off of your bicycle a few times, but you keep going, and it's that perseverance and belief, and then adapting and seeing what works.
And so I've got one last question. And that is about how to fail brilliantly. Okay, so Paul's written around how to fail brilliantly, and I'd just like to find out what that means.
Oh yes, yeah, because I wrote a book with someone called Fail Brilliantly, because I felt that a stigma about failure. If we fail, we're so hard on ourselves, and we say, oh, you know, I've done this again, or you know, I can never do this, or and I've done that so many times with writing. I've failed badly so many times by giving up and saying, oh no, I'm just not good enough, without realizing that failing is part of the process of succeeding, that you can only go along that journey if you fail. And so failure is, we shouldn't even use the word fail, but it's part of the process. So when we fail, we shouldn't say, oh no, that's terrible, or that's the end of this. That's normal. And we say that to students. So that's quite normal that it's not working, because that's part of our journey. And that's the creative process.
So how to fail brilliantly? So to fail badly is
yes.
to personalise it? Is it
Yes.
to say, oh, it's me, I'm terrible,
it's
the work is
terrible.
terrible, I'll never be anything?
Yeah, or this shouldn't happen.
You have to be angry.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my default.
Yeah. Very brilliant. So, I recognise this is part of the process. This is what happens.
Okay.
Don't take it in on myself. This is actually a normal step. Yeah.
So, okay, I did say lastly, and then I'm saying lastly again. If students have not necessarily considered the major for themselves within their creative industry degree, you offer a minor as well, and also the potential for students to take electives.
Yes, what's nice about this program in creative industries is it's very flexible, and you can also change your mind as you're going. So, actually, so it's flexible enough in some cases that you can say, I can change, do a minor here in creative writing, and I take a certain number of courses, or a major, because a lot of them are interlocking, and of course our creative industries have that capacity that we can change. So we offer the major, and we offer a minor, and you have electives where you can actually just sample a few courses, and of course they all work together. I think all these creative industries work together. Creative writers do design, they do communication, they do art, they do film, they do music, and I think the more of these things, the more colour you have, the better.
Yes.
You know, the more on your palette. You know?
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you, Paul. I will now fail more brilliantly in the future, and I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you.
Very
I
much.
enjoyed being here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.